Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Webinar Wednesdays with Mint Group. I'm Sugeshni Subrian, the head of marketing at Mint, and every month we take an informative and engaging dive into the tech world, covering the latest from Microsoft, industry trends, and how technology can help you and your business stay ahead. And today we're diving into a topic that's not just a buzzword, but an actual game changer: developing a generative AI strategy for your business. Imagine having a digital Picasso or a virtual Shakespeare at your fingertips, ready to brainstorm, to create, and innovate alongside you. Gen AI is transforming how we approach problem solving, creativity, and efficiency. Did you know that businesses implementing AI are seeing a 40% increase in productivity? And we are testament to this here at Mint. Also, the stats are saying 70% of top executives are already prioritizing AI in their innovation strategies. So whether you're looking to streamline your operations or enhance your customer experiences or even unlock new revenue streams, a solid Gen AI strategy can be your golden ticket. So as we get started, please make use of the Q&A feature, and we will ensure that all of your questions are answered by the end of the session. Great, I hope you have a fresh cup of tea or coffee, and we're going to get started now. Please note that this webinar is being recorded. Over to you, Ed.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Sue. Hi everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Edward Miller. I'm a pre-sale solution architect at Mint. And as Sue mentioned, today we're going to be looking at how you can develop a generative AI strategy for your organization. Gen AI is a hot topic at the moment, and we see a lot of companies in different phases of their journey to implement generative AI. Some companies are still exploring potential use cases. Some companies haven't even looked at it yet. And some companies have already implemented solutions, and some companies already have failed solutions in generative AI. So we're going to look at a few pillars that we like to focus on and that we believe is crucial for a successful generative AI implementation within your organization. And we hope that what you'll get out of this webinar is just a few things to consider if you are looking at implementing generative AI, or if you're already in the process of implementing generative AI. So if we look at our agenda, there's three main sections. So we'll just start with a brief overview of generative AI. The focus of this session is more around the strategy of implementing generative AI. So we're not going to get into too much of the weeds of implementing generative AI from a technical perspective. But if you would like to have a more technical session or a one-on-one session to uncover some use cases within your business, please reach out to us, and we can have a session with you around that. Then secondly, we're going to look at some common Gen AI use cases that we're seeing. These are not specific to industries. They're more general use cases. And then lastly, we're going to focus on creating a generative AI strategy for your business, organization, and some of the items that you need to focus on. Now, before we start, before we get into the first section, we just like to start with a poll. Just to see how familiar your teams are with generative AI. So we're going to have a poll, I believe, in the chat. If we can ask everyone just to have a look at it and just respond and just give us an honest response on where you are or how familiar your team is with generative AI. I can't see the chat, so you'll just need to let me know if it's up currently.
Yeah, we've got about 14 responses so far.
Excellent. All right.
With the bulk of our audience saying beginner to intermediate.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Good to know. So while that's going, let's kick it off. Right. So generative AI, as we said, it's quite a hot topic at the moment. I think everyone has heard of ChatGPT by now, except if you've been living under a rock. And also things like DALL-E and all of the hundreds of other models that are out there currently. So it's important to understand the difference between generative AI and what we like to call traditional AI in sort of air quotes. It doesn't mean it's old AI. It's still very relevant, and it's still mainly in use more than Gen AI today, and probably for years to come still. If we look at traditional AI, you're looking at things like machine learning, enforcement learning, and deep learning. So you have machine learning models that are designed to look at a specific set of data to identify patterns, or to tag specific data within those data sets. And these machine learning models can be very efficient if they're set up correctly, and they can be very good for a specific task. And as mentioned, these are still very relevant today. Generative AI or generative adversarial networks, they vary between variational autoencoders and transformers, and it creates new data. Whereas things like machine learning can analyze data, can make predictions, potentially solve problems, generative AI sets out to create new data, new ideas, create new images, new text. So it's important to understand where it fits in the AI landscape. It might be that if you go through your use cases within your organization, that traditional AI is still actually more relevant for specific use cases. If you think of things like fraud detection, a lot of that is still ML, and generative AI, part of it can be used for fraud detection, but a machine learning model with the correct data is normally a lot more accurate around that. Then the outputs, so with traditional AI, you'll get some insights, maybe some decisions that you can make out of it, and also some actions. Whereas with generative AI, it can create new text, it can create code, so computer code. You can use it to write code, or in the case of things like GitHub Copilot, you can use it to assist your developers, assist your testers to write test cases and just speed up their workflow. It can create images and videos, and there's even generative AI models out there now for music creation. So it's really important to understand the difference and to apply the right AI technology to your specific use case or requirement. So if we just focus on generative AI, apologies, if we just focus on generative AI a little bit more, and specifically the text-based generative AI models like those from OpenAI, these are models that can understand and generate human-like text, and it's based on patterns that they've learned from vast amounts of data. And these models are known as generative pre-trained models. And the GPT models from OpenAI, they're based on neural networks, and specifically a type called transformers. And those networks are composed of, or a nice way of thinking about it is that it's composed of layers of interconnected nodes or neurons that processes information. And these models are trained on vast amounts of data, and this is mainly internet data, or data that they found on the internet. So it is important to understand that because those models are trained on what is publicly available, there can be some bias in the outputs, and that is something that needs to be validated if you are implementing a generative AI solution. Then on the learning pattern, so during training, the models learn to recognize patterns in the data. So for the text models, this includes understanding things like grammar and facts about the world, potentially some reasoning abilities, and even some level of common sense. And then once these models are trained, the model can generate new content. You provide it with a prompt, and the model will produce a coherent sentence that actually makes sense. And all of that is just based off of patterns that it's learned during its training. These models can also be fine-tuned. So the base model is trained on a broad data set, of course. It's data that's been retrieved from the internet. It's massive amounts of data points. These models can also be fine-tuned on specific data to make it more specialized. So if you want a model to write in your email writing style, you can fine-tune it on your text. So if you've got a specific use case within your business that's relevant to, let's say, the text-based generative AI models, you can connect it to your data and fine-tune it with your data to make it more relevant for your specific scenario. And then probabilistic decisioning. So these models don't always produce the exact same output if you ask it the same question. If you've used ChatGPT, you can also test this by asking it the same question. It's going to give you the same answer in essence, but it's going to use different words. And that is just because it is probabilistic. It estimates the probabilities and what word should come next. And then just the last thing to consider on this is also the limitations and ethics. So we've mentioned the biases because of the data that it's been trained on, and it's something that you need to validate and test for in your solution. These models are not perfect. It can sometimes produce incorrect or biased information. And OpenAI and Microsoft also emphasizes the ethical use of these models and to ensure that they're used responsibly and with an understanding of their limitations. There are things that like hallucinations where it can get something completely wrong, but because it is so good at creating text, if you're not a subject matter expert on whatever specific subject it creates a text on, you could believe it. And there's a lot of people that have been caught out this way, where they created research reports, thesis even, and a lot of the data didn't actually make sense. But if you read it and you're not a subject matter expert, it does look like it's plausible. So there are a few ways of testing for this and limiting this. And if you are using the Azure OpenAI service within Azure, then there's some guardrails in place for you against that to stop it from doing that. So if we look at some use cases, just very high level, just to give you a few examples of some of the use cases that we are seeing. Customer interaction and support is something that comes up a lot. Your customer support chatbots, these virtual assistants that can automatically respond to customer queries. Chatbots in the past, before large language models, were not that great. You had to go through specific steps to get to an outcome. But now with large language models, it really feels like they're talking to a human, and it can understand the context of what someone is asking. We've used it for identifying to what queue a specific email should go, or what case needs to be created based off of a customer email that was sent in. And it will summarize the case, it'll create an overview for you, and create all the relevant attributes for you in your case management system. And to get something like that with a machine learning model is quite tough, because everyone writes emails in a different way. It's not always structured in the same way. So with generative AI models, it's fairly simple to just get it to look at those emails. And it can also do sentiment analysis, so it can detect the sentiment of text. Then content and communication, so creating content, so for marketing teams to create content for new products that are launching. It is excellent at that. You can do language translation and summarization, especially if you're using some of the more modern, bigger models like the GPT-4o models, and also for educational support. It's great in explaining concepts to people. You can use it as an educational co-pilot solution. Then business operations and decision support. So you can do things like personalized recommendations. This can be both internally or external to your business, or for your customers, or internally to your staff. HR and recruitment is quite a big one. We ourselves at Mint have an internal GPT-powered bot that we use if someone has a query around our policies and procedures. In the past, they would go to our HR team because people just don't like reading documents. So they would just ask someone, but now we do have a bot in place that can answer those basic queries around leave or getting a new laptop or anything like that. And then also medical assistance for summarizing things like patient files and financial analysis to look at specific reports and analyze trends and generate reports as well. Then from the tech dev and analysis, we've mentioned GitHub Copilot, so code generation, creating test cases for code, and understanding. So asking it to explain a piece of code is something that we found quite useful. If you're taking on a new code base, starting at a new company, or there's a new solution that someone needs to take over, it's great to have a little co-pilot that you can ask questions about the code, and it can explain to you what the solution actually does, so that you can get onboarded a lot faster. And then also legal document analysis. It is quite good at reviewing and creating drafts of legal documents. So it's, just before we go to the next part, it is important to understand that in the generative AI space, there are solutions that can be seen as almost off-the-shelf solutions. So in the Microsoft stack, you have all of these co-pilots that Microsoft has released, your M365 co-pilot that sits in Outlook, it sits in PowerPoint, in Word. It can help you write documents, write emails, summarize text. It can also give you action items that came out of your Teams meetings. If your Teams meetings you've got transcription on. These are sort of the off-the-shelf solutions that leverages generative AI. You can extend these to a certain degree. So you can, M365 Copilot, you can integrate it with your own systems within your business if needed. But they're generally seen as off-the-shelf solutions. You then also have your low-code platform solutions like your Copilot Studio, where you can build generative AI-based chatbots. So where you have a specific use case for a chatbot, you can use Copilot Studio to build a custom Copilot connected to data, have it do specific actions, and so on. And all of this is done in a low-code environment. And then on the other end of the scale, you've got your more custom dev, bespoke solutions that leverages things like the Azure OpenAI service. So Microsoft has made the GPT models available within Azure. So within your own cloud tenant, you can spin up these models and use them for custom solutions that you need to build or that you need to integrate with existing systems that you have. And the great thing with that is that the data remains within your Azure tenant. Microsoft or OpenAI don't train on your data. Whereas if you're just using ChatGPT directly or their APIs, there's it's a bit vague around how long they keep your data and if they train on your data. Yeah. So that's just the different use cases, and then also just the different types of Gen AI solutions that you have. All right, then we're going to go into creating a generative AI strategy. But before we do this, we'd just like to do our second poll. So what do you see as the biggest skills gaps in your team currently for generative AI? And just go over to the chat and just let us know.
Yeah, it's on screen now.
Excellent. Okay. So in creating a generative AI strategy, there's, as mentioned at the start, we've seen companies in different phases of their generative AI journey. And we find that to be successful, you need to have a holistic approach to generative AI. It's very easy to just focus on the tech, to say that I need an AI specialist, or I need a data scientist, I need a cloud architect to architect the AI solution. I need a data engineer to ensure that my data is correct, and then we can go forth and build a generative AI solution. But we found that there's a few more things that you need to consider. Things like your skills around compliance and the legal side of it. So we'll get into that, and we've broken this into 6 sections that we'll go through now. And the first one on that is assess. So assess your current capabilities and skill sets. So firstly, you need to look at data. Data is very important for generative AI if you're going to connect it to your own data sets, or you're going to run this on top of your data that you currently have, which 9 times out of 10 is relevant for generative AI use cases. So you need to look at what is the quality of your data, and what's the availability of the data. Is the quality up to a standard that you can connect it to a generative AI model, that it'll be able to give you good results and answers based off of your data? Or do you first need to go through a process of cleaning up your data, getting it in specific formats, and then making it available to a generative AI model? And then the availability of your data, is this available to a cloud-based model? Do you need to ingest this into cloud storage? Do you need to create some data pipelines around that, or batch updates or anything like that? We like to start with the data if you've got a use case that you're looking at. Then expertise. So does your team have the necessary skills to implement a generative AI solution? I mentioned the technical skills. On the next slide, we are going to get into some of the expertise that you need to consider, because there's quite a few more. You need to look at not just the technical, but you need to look at the stakeholder engagement, the risk management, the compliance and the legal side of using a generative AI solution, and how are your testers going to test this generative AI solution that gives potentially different outputs if you ask the question slightly differently. So it's quite a different way of working, and it's not just the technical side that you need to look at. Then processes and policies. So have you considered the security and compliance requirements for implementing a generative AI solution? And also the technology infrastructure. Do you have the necessary computing power and data storage available? Do you have a cloud platform that you can use to implement a generative AI solution? Is your data in that cloud platform? Do you need to move it to the cloud platform, or what does that look like? So you need to start with your current capabilities and skill sets before you start looking at actually building out a generative AI solution. And you need to look at things like, do you have in-house expertise, or do you need to get partners involved or specific vendors to assist you with the implementation? Right, then secondly, start assembling your AI team. So these are some of the areas that we like to focus on now. This looks like you would need to hire a massive team, but that's not necessarily the case. These are just a few things that you need to consider. It might be that you already have teams internally currently at your organization that can cover a lot of these items. They just need to be upskilled potentially. So on the data governance side, you may already have data engineers that looks after your data, but do they understand what format the data needs to be in for it to work with a generative AI solution? If it is documents, then what technology will be used to make the documents available to the generative AI solution with things like Azure AI Search? Or if it's relational data, we need to look at something like Cosmos DB as an example to make the data available. And does your data engineers have the necessary skills to do that? And what is the access on this data as well? So if you are going to implement an off-the-shelf solution like Microsoft 365's Copilot, you need to ensure that the access and security of your data in your environment is correctly set up. If not, it may expose data to the wrong stakeholders. So someone might ask a question about a document and get an answer back about a document that they don't actually need, are supposed to have access to. So you need to ensure that your access and your security on your data and your environment is set up correctly, and you've reviewed it, so that the Gen AI solution doesn't expose those limitations in your environment. Then ethical AI, so things like fairness and bias reduction. As mentioned, these models are trained on vast amounts of data that's generally scraped from the internet, and there can be some bias in that data. And as with anything, garbage in and garbage out, if the data has got bias in it, then the model is also going to have bias in it. Now, with modern large language models, there's a lot of work that the companies like OpenAI and the others have done to limit that, but there is still a risk that some of that bias could come through, and that the model isn't necessarily fair. So your team that potentially used to do testing on applications that were built, if they are now going to do testing for a generative AI model, they need to consider the ethical AI part of it as well. And how are they going to ensure that the outputs of your solution or from your generative AI model is fair and there isn't bias in it? Then compliance and legal, so looking at things like regulatory adherence and privacy laws. So as mentioned earlier, if you're using the ChatGPT APIs, if your legal team goes through their policy documents and their legal documents, you'll find that it seems like they may keep your data for a few days or months, and there's a chance that there might be training done on your data. So you need to ensure that your compliance and legal team is upskilled on generative AI, and they understand it to look for these regulatory adherence or regulation that you need to adhere to, and also things like POPIA and GDPR, and yeah, all the privacy laws around it. Then risk management, so doing risk assessments and mitigation strategies around it. So if you are going to launch a generative AI solution, with it being probabilistic, what are the mitigation strategies around it if you are starting to get answers that you might not want your customers to get? Of course, all of this is done by your testing team, and they will look at all of this and test it to their best knowledge. But you do still need to do risk assessments around it and have a mitigation strategy. Then stakeholder engagement. So you need to look at the transparency around your solution, and then also the external and internal communication. So if you're keeping your staff up to date, giving them the necessary training, it is going to ensure that they actually use the solution. And also, if you are communicating with your external stakeholders, if it's an externally facing solution, you're ensuring that people are actually going to use the solution, and you're keeping them up to date with it as well. So that's something we found that is crucial, not just in generative AI, on any IT project implementation. That to drive user adoption, you need that stakeholder engagement and digital enablement for the teams. And then, last but not least, the technical implementation. So you do still need the infrastructure specialists that are familiar with the AI technologies. You still need a product owner, you still need data scientists or data engineers to assist from a data perspective, and also the data scientists to assist with fine-tuning the models, and also assisting with some of the testing of the models. So there's, from a team and people perspective, these are 6 of the main pillars that we find you need to look at. And as mentioned, you don't need to go and build this massive team. You can leverage existing team members, potentially just upskill them. But you do need to look at all of these aspects to create your AI team. Right, then once you've got your AI team defined, they need a North Star. You need to define your AI objectives and guiding principles. And this needs to be aligned with your business and with your business goals. So again, ethical, this comes up quite a lot with generative AI. So you need to ensure fairness in your solution. You need to mitigate bias, and you need to respect the privacy of the users and their data. So are you going to train on users' data? Are you ensuring that users are actually signing up for that? You need to lay out those guiding principles from an ethical perspective for the team. And transparency. So will your solution need clear decision-making processes so that it's not just a black box where users give it input and it gives you an output, but you're not actually sure how it got to that. You need to ensure that there's clear decision-making processes, and that helps to make the results or the outputs of the model explainable so that you can track all of that. And it also needs to be accessible for stakeholders. You don't want this just black box solution. It also needs to be scalable. So you need to ensure that it's on adaptable infrastructure. So most modern cloud environments, their AI solutions are very scalable. You need to ensure that it's set up correctly, and that it's also resilient across different business functions. And then last but not least, the business alignment. So you need to define clear AI goals that are tied to your business outcomes. and align AI use cases with strategic priorities and core capabilities, so that you don't go and build these solutions, but they're not actually aligned with business. There's no clear return on investment for these AI solutions, because if they are implemented correctly, they can be costly. If you don't do all your homework, they can become quite costly. So you need to ensure that there is a return on investment for these solutions, and the business is aligned with your generative AI strategy. Then identify partners, vendors, and available technology. So we mentioned when you look at your skills, you also need to look at potentially off-the-shelf solutions or partners or vendors that you can use for a successful generative AI implementation. So you need to research the technologies that are out there if you have a specific use case. It might be that there's something out there that's already 90% of what you require. You just need to customize it slightly for your specific use case and business requirements. And then also identify strategic partners who bring industry expertise, domain-specific knowledge, and AI experience. If you don't have the AI skills, then look at the partners that can assist you with that. Or if you need domain-specific knowledge or industry expertise, if you're building out a new solution for a specific industry, then look at who you can partner with to build out that solution. And then evaluate the vendors for AI platforms, tools, and support services that aligns with your tech and business needs. So look at the vendors that can supply some of these solutions to you, and that they align with your business goals and with your use case requirements. All right, and then second last, build iteratively for success. So we've seen that most successful companies, when they start up with generative AI, they will look at a focused solution. That is, it doesn't have to be a large solution that's going to change the whole way the company is working. But it is still something that's going to have a return on investment. It's going to make the employees' lives a lot simpler. It's going to fast track their workflow on a daily basis, or it's going to improve your customer service. Any solution like that is great for an initial MVP solution that you can develop and test and get out quickly. We'd advise not to start with this large solution that is going to change the whole business and the processes and all of that. Rather get a focused use case and build that out and look at that. Then once you build your solution, you need to test and gather feedback from the users. So you need to engage the end users. You need to get their insights on using this new generative AI-based solution that you've developed. They need to tell you their experience with it, potentially the performance, the usability, effectiveness, and you can use all of that to refine and improve the solution, so that you take a very iterative approach to building out your first generative AI solution. Then lastly, around the pillars for building out a generative AI strategy for your organization. So this is also very important, is measuring the success and scale. So if you are going to develop a solution, you need to measure, let's say if the solution is to improve the workflow of employees, to fast track specific tasks that they need to do, you need to be able to track that so that you can report on it to see what the data actually says. Are certain support cases being resolved in a faster than usual. Our customers' satisfaction going up because the whole case management process has been optimized by leveraging generative AI. So you need to define key metrics for your solution, whether that is user engagement or impact on specific business processes. You need to define those, and then you need to start tracking that as you roll out your solution. Some of the off-the-shelf solutions like M365 Copilot has a dashboard that will tell you the time that employees are actually using the solution, how much time they're potentially saving by doing specific tasks and things like Word, and also what functionality they are using the most. If you're building a custom GenAI solution, that's what you need to strive for. You need to collect all of those metrics so that you can actually quantify the solution and prove that return on investment of the solution. And then gradual scaling strategy. So begin with successful pilots and then expand your AI to additional departments and then potentially expand it organization-wide. So if you are creating a specific use case, look at something that could be relevant to multiple teams. Use a specific department or a specific team initially for the pilot and gather their feedback and iterate and improve it. And once you start to see some success with it and you're getting some good metrics, then start to expand the solution out to other divisions or across the organization if it's relevant. But measuring the success and scale of the solution is extremely important because it can be quite hard if you're not gathering that data, to understand what impact your generative AI solution is really having on your business. And if all of the hosting costs and all of the development costs, if all of that was really worth all of the effort, or if you should have just stuck to your old ways of doing business. All right, I think we've flown through that, and we've actually ended up slightly earlier, but we do have one last poll for you. And it's just a question around reflecting on today's session. If it's given you any insights, we'll pop that into the chat, and if we can ask everyone just to have a look at that and just give us your feedback on that, so that we can just see where potentially some of the gaps are still that some people may have. We'll just give a minute for everyone to respond to that, and then we'll go into Q&A.
So there's a mix between the top two, establishing a cross-functional Gen AI Center of Excellence, aligning AI initiatives closely, and then prioritizing continuous upskilling. Oh, creating, actually, yeah, it's still in flight.
All right, and I think with that, if there's any questions, please feel free to ask us. You can unmute and ask us, or you can put it in the chat, and we can get to that.
Yeah, there isn't anything in the Q&A at the moment. There was just one query that Zizi had asked if we could share the recording, but that will be shared with everyone in the next day or so.
All right, excellent. I think we'll just give it another minute or so for any questions, and then we can end the session.
Yeah, then we can wrap up. Peter says, thanks, Edward. Useful information. Callian says, thanks for an amazing session, Edward. Alison Tetley says, thanks very much so far.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Okay,
Right, so,
wonderful.
Sorry, is there a question, Sue?
No, I don't think there's any more. Is there any questions? Let me just have a double check. One you posed.
I'm curious.
Yes, thank you, Luz. I'm curious about vendor lock-in when deciding a solution, and that's from Jasmine Baines.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. It depends on the type of solution and the use case that you're looking at. If you are buying an off-the-shelf solution, then there is a lot more vendor lock-in. If you are looking at a more custom solution that's going to leverage one of the GPT large language models and you host it in cloud infrastructure like in Azure, then you don't really have a lot of vendor lock-in. You can swap out that model that's hosted in Azure OpenAI with a different model that's even hosted in a different cloud platform. And also you will be developing a solution around that that's just using the large language model in the backend to process text or images or audio. But if you are going to get an off-the-shelf solution, then you will find that there are a lot more vendor lock-in. If you look at things like M365 Copilot, that of course runs within your Office applications. So that is locked into your Office applications. And that's an example of an off-the-shelf solution.
Okay, great. I think that was all of the questions that we had. I guess we can close now. Thank you very much, Ed. That was super interesting. And I'm sure if people have any questions, you can just reach out on info@mintgroup.net and we will put you in touch with Edward and you can take the conversations further. So if you'd like to attend our webinar Wednesday next month, we will be focusing specifically around Dynamics 365 and customer insights journeys. We'll be showcasing its features and capabilities. So if you are an existing Dynamics 365 customer or looking at implementing customer insights journey, it will be definitely worth signing up for. I see we've added the registration link to the chat, but we will be sending out invitations in the next couple of days. Thank you very much for spending the afternoon with us or midday, and have a great rest of your day. Oh, I think we might have one more question. Oh, there is another question, Ed. Is it best to work towards a customized solution?
It depends on the use case. If it's something that's already available off the shelf, you might be spending a lot of development time recreating what is already there. But on the flip side of that, with the off-the-shelf solutions, you normally have licensing costs that you need to consider. That is always going to be there. But if you are building a custom solution, you are looking at mainly the upfront development, obviously the support of the solution, the ongoing support, and then also things like the cloud consumption costs. So yeah, it does depend on the use case. There's pros and cons to each one of those. It depends on your business and your specific use case. But if anyone has specific use cases or would like to flesh anything out, where we can have one-on-one sessions and we can look at some of the use cases for your business specifically and advise on what would best suit your use case.
Wonderful. I think that's a wrap then. Thank you everyone for your time today.
Excellent. Thanks everyone.